All right, welcome back to another episode of Phoenix Edge. This is an RPG and gaming news podcast. My name is Hat.
And I'm Eric.
And today we are going to be talking about the recent story that broke about GameStop reporting a $500 million loss. Then we also have the PS1 Classic. They're using an inferior version for certain games, so we're going to get into that. And then Nintendo applies for a couple of new trademarks and reissues or renews some licenses for some older games, one of them being The Last Story. So we're going to get into that. And then there's going to be a new Final Fantasy Brave Exvius game coming out that's been announced. So we're going to talk about that. And then finally, we have some comments that we want to get into. But before we get into all that, Eric, what have you been playing this week?
I have been playing Darksiders 3 this week.
How's that been going for you?
Pretty great. I think it's a really good game. I know there has been a lot of mixed reviews from mixed reviews from the reviewers on the game, and some of it does hold true, but I think the pros of the game greatly outweigh the cons that there are. It's basically a game, an action 3D type of game, one that's very clearly inspired by Dark Souls, this particular title. The first two titles are very different from it, so if you are familiar with those two games, this one is pretty different for the most part. If you're familiar with Dark Souls, you're going to catch a lot of things with what they do in the game. You have to be more precise with enemies, and there's a slew of boss patterns that you have to learn to take a boss down. I wouldn't say it's as hard as Dark Souls. To be sure, it's mostly because it's a lot more forgiving if you die. There's a lot more checkpoints, and souls don't disappear if you die a second time without collecting it.
Sure.
You can still grab them there.
One of the biggest things I've seen about this game is some reviewers have said that while the gameplay is really, really good, there's aspects of the game, maybe it's the linear fashion, which isn't a bad thing, or just the graphical style of the game. It makes it feel like it's almost like a HD remaster of a PlayStation 3 game or something like that. Like, it seems like it's from that generation.
I mean, it's obviously a lower budget game. It's made by a lower budget studio, which is why. The original group that made the first two Darksiders, THQ shut down. So, but something miraculously happened, and they were able to get this going. And making this, and I will say they did a very good job for what they could with it. It's obviously no big open world type of game. It does have a linear aspect to it, but I mean, it's always been entertaining. I think it flows very nicely from the first sin to the next sin, and there's story aspects in between. Like this game, you're the third horseman. Apocalypse, Fury. The first two games you were War and Death, but this one you get to be Fury, and I would assume the fourth game you get to be Strife. But in this game, you're tasked by the Charred Council to bring peace to the realm by collecting all the 7 deadly sins that escaped after the apocalypse. And the story just goes on from there. But your basic main task is to defeat all these sins, who are scattered on different parts of the map.
Interesting. So it gets your seal of approval thus far.
I think it does. Definitely some of the drawbacks to the game is more on the technical side of things.
Really?
The frame rate does drop a lot. I mean,
yeah, I've seen that.
It definitely drops a lot. There are pretty long loading times, especially if you die, and there are these annoying times where you know how games load ahead of time when you're trying to seamlessly transit to something. A lot of times you get stuck and you're going faster than what it can load up.
Yeah,
and
so that happens.
Yeah, and I'm playing the PS4 version for anyone asking. But they did say that they're working on patches to alleviate those type of issues. So I say once they've been able to do that, unless you're willing to look past frame rate and loading issues, the game's pretty solid. I had fun. it's nothing. It's not. It's no industry pushing game.
Sure.
By any means, but it's a very safe, fun game. I'll say.
Yeah. One of the things that I saw that some people were describing this as is just it's a very, like you said, it's a very enjoyable game to play. But it's kind of strange in that, like in this PS4, Xbox One generation, games are either super high budget AAA games like Red Dead, or they're indie games. There's not too many games where they come out and they're kind of that mid tier. Like it's not super low budget, but it's not super high budget either. And so it's kind of interesting that we're actually seeing a resurgence of that, at least a little bit with this game.
Yeah, I would say also it's not a very long game either. I believe I'm getting near the final boss, and I haven't done like 100% exploration, but I think I'm about 12 hours roughly into the game. Okay. I'm getting near the end of it.
Interesting.
Yeah, well, so cool. I think it's a really great game, but if you're someone who doesn't believe that's worth $60, like the how long it is, the frame rate, and that, wait a few patches or wait maybe after Christmas and see how it is and pick it up. But me personally, I haven't been enjoying it.
This definitely seems like one of those games that you'll see discounted maybe 5 or 6 months from now. It's not one of those games that seems to me like it'll stay $60 for very long. So.
Oh yeah, there will be a Steam sale for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So I've been kind of toying around with some of my Black Friday purchases, and essentially I gave in and I got a PS4 Pro, and I got a 4K TV on a sale. I was planning on updating my PC some more, but I was looking at it and I said, you know what? I need to get another PlayStation 4. I want a PS4 Pro. I should just give in. They have a really good sale on it right now. So I picked that up, and with that, I've been playing some more Dragon Quest XI. We did ask, or I asked last week in the podcast if people are going to be interested at all in a Dragon Quest XI discussion, and some people responded back that they're interested. So I thought to myself, okay, I need to go ahead and beat this, and this will give me a chance to kind of compare a game that I've gotten 100 and something hours into on the regular PS4, and now I can play it on the PS4 Pro. Obviously, it's turn-based system. It's not really pushing the hardware as much as some of the other games that I have.
Is it in 4K, though? The game itself?
I mean, I haven't put anything on it to say, like I can't, from a technical standpoint, I'm not exactly certain, but I do feel like the game looks better. It looks sharper playing on the PS4 Pro through the 4K TV. It does feel better. It feels slightly less sluggish. Not that the original version actually felt sluggish, but it's just some things you just don't notice until you've played it on the other system. But everything just seems to move with a little bit of a pep to a step. Menus open a little faster, loading screens go a little faster. It's a good experience, and I think it's a really good purchase. So I'm really happy with it. As long as Sony doesn't come out with the PS5 in like February, I think it was a good purchase.
So, I think it's a good purchase. I'm interested in getting one myself. If I ever get a 4K TV, I definitely want to get a Pro, or at least to enjoy it, because I wouldn't have anything else to enjoy it with. But I mean, so if you got a 4K TV, yeah, buy something to take advantage of it.
Yeah, the one drawback was I was trying to transfer like all my data from my other PS4 to this one, and oh my god, that was such a hassle. Now I know if I signed up for PS Plus, which I'm not a member of, I can upload save files, and then I can transfer that to my other profile on the other PS4. But I was trying to transfer like literally everything from the other PS4 to this one, and Jesus Christ, it was a hassle.
Oh, good. It won't be hard for me then.
Well, okay. So the reason it was difficult was I was Googling this and how to do this, and I had to connect both PlayStation 4s up to like a Ethernet cable, and then I had to like press the button on the other PS4 until it like made a special beep, and then it like the other one caught it, and then it had to like download. Well, first off, I had to upload all the files, and then I had to download all the files to the other PS4. And that doesn't sound that elaborate until I factor in that my other PS4 was not anywhere near my router. So I had to like completely unplug that, plug everything in, then find another monitor for my PS4 to plug into so I can say, okay, like, is this working? And then I had to unplug something else's Ethernet cable, plug that into the back of that PS4. It was such a hassle. But once I got it up and running, it worked fine. And, you know, pretty seamless experience once you do it. And I guess I'm not really sure why they both have to have like a Ethernet connection to be able to do that. I know you get increased speed, right? But I could see that being useful, but I don't know why that would be a requirement. Seems strange to me. But yeah, it worked out really, really well, and I'm really happy with it. So,
yeah, good.
But anyways, quick update on my Dragon Quest XI. Like I said last week, I could beat the game anytime. All my characters are in their mid-90s. And that last boss battle, I'm not going to spoil anything, but the last boss battle of the post-game, Jesus Christ. That boss is murdering me. So I'm
a toughie.
I'm gonna have to. I've been reading up some strategies online. I got some ideas for some different pieces of equipment I can get, and then you know, some different party lineups and strategies to kind of counteract some of the things the boss does. But that boss is no joke. So, but I'm literally, I can only go up like 4 more levels. So I don't feel like it's something I can grind my way out of. It's just going to be something, from what I've seen online, a lot of people have said it's just a war of attrition, basically. So I just have to get enough items and just get enough equipment to kind of counteract some of the various effects the boss does on my party to make sure that I can sustain myself long enough to finally see the final post-game cutscene. So that's where I'm at. But I should be able to, I think I'll be able to get through that easily this week. So.
All right, good man. Get it done.
Yep, for sure. But let's go ahead and move on to our first topic. This was actually really surprising to me. Not so much that GameStop is struggling, but that they're struggling this much. So.
500 million. Oof.
Yeah, I'm going to pull up this article here from IGN. I read a couple different articles on this, and I felt like they simplified it the best, because otherwise I was like sitting here thinking like, okay, I'm going to have to start explaining some accounting ratios and stuff on the podcast, and that doesn't sound like fun, but they simplified it in a very easy to understand way. So I'm just going to read the first couple sentences so you guys get a kind of a overview of the situation thus far. So it says GameStop has released its third quarter fiscal report, which ended on November 3rd, showing an overall net income loss of $488.6 million. Now, net income loss, that means after they subtracted their expenses, like they were in the hole, 500 million. That's not good. The report included the recent sale of Spring Mobile, one of GameStop Corporation's owned companies, which brought in approximately $700 million. GameStop previously said they would pay off debts, fund share repurchases, reinvest in core video games and collectible businesses to drive growth, or some combinations of these options with the funds from Spring Mobile. Pre-owned sales were down 13.4% compared to previous quarters, which is the core of what GameStop's company is rooted in. But despite the company's loss, sales were up for new hardware, especially with Xbox One X and PS4 sales at 12.8%, and software sales increased by 11%, roughly. Accessories also increased by 32%, heavily due to headset and controller sales, etc. They go on to say, we experienced solid growth in the third quarter, including double-digit growth across software, hardware, accessories, and collectibles, underscoring GameStop's leadership position in video games and our unique ability to sell. Shut up. You guys lost $500 million. Anyways, they go on to point out that over Black Friday, they did really well, especially in terms of in relation to games like Red Dead Redemption, Spider-Man, games like that, and also on hardware. On the hardware front, they did do better, but all in all, yeah, they had to report a loss of $500 million, and there's been some speculation that some of the since they've been lacking a CEO for 6 months, they might be going a different route with some investors buying out the remaining stocks and going a new direction. But I don't know if that's what they're planning on doing, which would make people nervous if you have stock in GameStop because you want to sell it at a good price. But yeah, things are not looking good for GameStop right now.
Certainly not. The thing with GameStop is, first off, I don't wish the GameStop to shut down. I don't want to see people lose jobs at all. But it's giving me very eerie, like deja vu type of deal with Blockbuster.
Yeah.
And the fact that I don't feel like GameStop is doing much to try to evolve with the times. And in all fairness to GameStop, it might be hard to do that. We're getting into a digital era right now where people rather just purchase something on their couch than go out and buy a used version of the game.
Yeah.
And digital, I mean, as much as I'm a physical person, like you see right behind me, very much into the physical form of games. But the fact of the matter is that digital is very much taking over slowly but surely. And this is the preference for people. And this was the same thing with Blockbuster. It's no one wants to go to a rental store anymore to rent a movie. They rather just turn on their TV and have like Netflix or Prime Video. Prime Video in particular is like has almost everything.
Yeah.
You can rent, and it's like $3 to $4 to rent for 48 hours for the usual movie, and maybe a little more for the newest movies that come to video. And
it's very convenient.
Yeah, I mean the convenience is just right there, and Blockbuster just kept telling themselves at the time, it's like, well, that's never going to happen. People are still going to want to come and physically rent their videos. And as soon as Blockbuster realized, like, oh crap, it's it's like this is really happening. They tried to do a similar service themselves where they were trying to, like, you can mail the DVD, and then Blockbuster, I'm not sure if they tried to do some form of streaming service or some Redbox type of deal, but I remember they were trying a few last minute attempts before they ultimately shut down. And I really feel like this is the direction that GameStop is slowly going. It's that there's going to be more convenience and better deals with digital sales. Like, even like with Steam right now always has sales on something.
Well, honestly, I do think that, like, when you bring up Blockbuster, that is the perfect analogy, because Blockbuster had the option to buy Netflix for $300 million, and they chose not to. And that was, if you can like refine it down to one decision that ended your company, that was it, right? And if you look at GameStop, I don't know if they ever had the option to purchase an online service like Steam, but I feel like that Steam should have been what GameStop should have been. Like, they should have just naturally went right into that and just went into an online storefront, and they would be just absolutely killing it right now. But instead, like you said, they went a different route. They've been trying to sell used games. I think they've also been trying to expand, like selling comic books and like stuff like that. And, you know, like they've been able to hold their head over water, but like, it's not really anything that seems sustainable, especially now with them losing so much money. I mean, yeah, you can go and buy a hard copy game nowadays, but anybody that buys that game, they're already used to downloading something because they're going to pop it in their PS4, and there's going to be a day one patch, so they're going to have to download that. If they want any DLC, they're probably just going to buy it on the store and download it. So it's just natural that people are just going to naturally gravitate towards these digital sales. So I just think it's perplexing that GameStop has not really tried to transition into a more digital service than they currently are. And I think part of the problem is, from what I understand, I don't know if this is still the truth, but I've seen that a lot of hard copy stores like GameStop have kind of pressured Sony and other companies to say, like, hey, like, you want your stuff sold in our store, which is kind of, I would call their bluff all day. If they told me this, you have to keep your digital sales at $60, or they have to be more expensive than the hard copy sales. I've read that several places that like that is a thing, and I don't, or at least like they've threatened like they'll promote your competitor or something like that. I don't know if that's the case, but it always has been perplexing to me that a game will cost $60 in the PS Store digitally, but then if I go to GameStop, it's $35 because it's been out for a year. But I mean, how long do you think you could honestly keep that going? It's like, you know, like with Steam, it's just totally like removes any possible way for them to compete because it's just so convenient, you know?
Yeah, I think GameStop is definitely late to the game when it comes to doing digital for things. I do notice on their website they'll give you like a digital code for it, but right now, unless GameStop can find a way to entice people to buy stuff at their digital store, it's gonna be a slippery downhill experience from there. Because I mean, do you remember a couple years ago there was a feud with like GameStop and the game companies over used games,
Yeah,
and stuff like that. I really think that war is going on, just like, but but this time I think the industry is being a little smarter, and they're like, okay, well, how can we screw over places like GameStop that sell our games used, but we don't make it at the expense of the customer? Because like back then they put online codes in games. Batman Arkham City was the famous one, where
sure.
they held back, like you could not play the Catwoman section of the game unless you punched in the online code. So you're missing part of the game for buying a used copy, assuming the person who bought it before you used the
Actually
code.
use the code. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was very anti-consumer, just trying to get back at a store like GameStop. So they came up, I guess they came up with something a little more clever, where it's like, okay, so how do we make digital as enticing as possible? And it's just the best of both worlds. We don't have to, physically distribute so much,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't have to deal with other companies. We can sell it straight from our PSN, Xbox Live,
Well, and if they've been bullied into making those cost full price for way longer than they should, whether or not that's still the case, people have gotten used to the fact that digital sales cost more, at least on the PS Store. So they're making a killing off that because they've removed the middleman, and then like you're not having to produce a disc or like a case or anything. So like it's the fact that like it's $60 still is outrageous.
Now, if digital stores sold these $60 games for $50 on digital,
GameStop would be out of business tomorrow.
Oh, that would destroy them. But I don't think they'll change it, just because I think the effects are already happening without having to drop the price. I think dropping it to 50 would be
just aggressive.
Overkill.
Yeah.
On them, but it's
no secret that game companies do not like GameStop. I mean, just like you said, they will take your game and they'll sell it brand new, then they'll buy it back for like way less and then sell it to another consumer for far less money, and then that original game company's not getting any kind of compensation for the development cost of that game because they just sold it used, and that's a large part of their profits is used games. So I'm pretty sure there's not too many game companies that are really crying a river for GameStop right now.
If I remember correctly, if it's a newer game that came out, let's say Red Dead Redemption 2, that came out, and
do they still have to pay something?
And I came and traded in after paying $60 for it. I believe GameStop would give you 25 to 30 in store credit, not cash. Cash is 20% less. They would give you 25 to 30, I think, depending. Okay. And they would take that and sell the game back for 55. So It's a massive profit on GameStop's end.
They're selling it for $55, and they're totally like not have like that sale. They do not have to pay anyone any kind of royalties, I don't think, or any kind of whatever you want to call it, a fee for being able to sell that game. They're not having to pay anyone for that. So I could see why that was that makes people upset, right? But I don't know. There's a part of me that's still kind of saddened by the fact that GameStop might not be a thing because, you know, there's not, like, at least in my area, like, there's a lot of used video game stores where they're kind of have that retro niche where, you know, you can go there and you can find PlayStation 2 games, PlayStation games, etc. But as far as like finding newer games that are maybe came out 2 years ago, there's not a lot of places besides GameStop. Maybe I haven't looked for them. So I hate the idea that I might be restricted to Amazon and Walmart if I want a hard copy game, you know?
Yeah, I mean, after Amazon kept screwing me over and over, there's a GameStop that's on the way from my work to where I live, and I like picking up my games there. I mean, it's convenient, it's right there. The people there are nice to talk to, you know, they're not overbearing or anything, and you know, I just get it. Most of the time, I just get my game and I go.
Yeah, I think that's
simple as that.
That's the thing too. Like, if I had to go to a Walmart and ask somebody about something there, like there's not going to be anybody that's really that knowledgeable. And you know, every time I've gone into a GameStop probably in the past year, I've walked away thinking like, that wasn't that bad of an experience. I needed an extra battery for my Switch. Somebody helped me out. You know, I was able to ask a guy at GameStop. I was like, hey, what's the easiest way to transfer data from one PS4 to the PS4 Pro? Like, I could Google it, but do you know off the top of your head? I mean, just having somebody there that's like actually can, like, you can talk about your purchase or even just talk about other games. I mean, that's a good experience to still have. So
yeah,
it's gonna be sad if that goes away.
Yeah, and certainly some people's experiences there are better than others, but really, I really compare that to other retails. There's sometimes I get good retail experiences, sometimes I don't. I mean, at the end of the day, these are employees getting paid pretty much, at least on the basic employee level, like minimum wage. So the attitude of minimum wage workers are pretty same across the board in retail. I mean, you'll get some good people, you'll get some people that are just like rude and think they're like worth more than whatever they're making, that type of deal. So I don't really put GameStop out with the rest of them on that, and like I said before, I don't want to see the company shut down. I really wish that they come up with an idea that brings them back to high relevance that they used to be, while being pro-consumer at the same time.
Sure.
I'd like to see that happen.
The only thing I can think of, and I'm sure they've got plenty of ideas themselves as a company, is maybe like people can go in there, and if there's a new game, if they're not so sure about it, they can pay $60, but just basically have a rental fee if you don't bring it back within 30 days. Like, that $60 will go ahead and go through, or you can bring it back and you didn't like it. Okay, well, here's $45 back, and then they can take that game and sell it used. I mean, I don't know. I can only think of things that might sustain them maybe an extra few years, but they're going to really have to come up with something that's going to, be a real game changer for them to come back like they were, I think.
Yeah. On top of that, as much as I don't trust Amazon right now delivering my packages, because I don't trust their delivery service. They're hiring anyone off the street to come deliver these packages now. But even on the physical side of things, people rather just order it online and it'll come in that day. In the ideal scenario, it'll come in the same day. And so you don't have to drive out to a store anymore. Like, Amazon will bring it to you the day it comes out.
Yeah. I mean, it's I pre-ordered the Sega Classics for the Switch. I thought about going to GameStop, and I was like, yeah, you know what? I'm just going to get that out of my mailbox. That sounds way easier. So,
I just threw that on the Christmas list. I'm like, I would play it, but Smash Bros is just gonna
take up all your time.
It's just gonna eat up my time. So I was like, maybe I'll put it on the Christmas list. Maybe someone will get it for me. It's a cheap game.
understandable. Well, you got Phantasy Star coming out like a week later too. So
yeah, I am interested to see how that works with the Sega Ages. I think on an experimental level, I want to try that out.
Speaking of which, this is off topic, but pertaining to that, I've seen that advertised as $7.99 on like the Nintendo website, but I have not been able. Are they going to be? Do you know if they're going to be releasing a hard copy of that game, or is it just going to be digital only?
No, digital only.
Okay, that's unfortunate. I was hoping for a hard copy.
Yeah, the Sega Ages is going to be a series of like some digital remaster of some way, rather if it's like HD or adding something to it. Because from what I heard, they're adding a mini map to Phantasy Star 1, which fixes like all the like 90% of the issues that are wrong with Dungeons and Phantasy Star.
Yeah, I was looking at some screenshots of a translated version of the game, and it's got like a whole map that just auto maps everything for you, and it's got some other like quality of life features, like it shows everybody's health and like how much money you have, so you don't have to stop and like open the menu and stuff. So you know, I think that's going to make it a much more enjoyable experience for modern gamers for sure.
Yeah, and just I think that package, that Sega Ages package, is going to be worth it alone just to have Phantasy Star 4 on your Switch.
Yeah, it's going to be a big deal. Sure.
Very nice.
That's why I'm looking forward to it personally. But anyways, I'll be looking out for that this Friday. So let's move on, though. We have next on the agenda, the PlayStation Classic. Now, this has been surprisingly high quality, and it's been getting rave reviews. IGN actually gave it a 5.5 out of 10. So,
yeah, I would say mediocre at best for a lot of them.
So this system has had a lot of problems, mainly from the fact that it's been just quickly done and for cheap. But here, I'll turn this off real quick. So before we get into this issue, the other issues we've seen thus far are that the biggest one is the games that are, bless you. Biggest thing is the games that have been chosen for the system. They're not the greatest. Some of them are very odd picks. Then on top of that, we've had the fact that you don't have the analog sticks. That was an issue. And we came into the fact that apparently they're just using an emulator that's been available online for years. So it's got like they did no work on that front to really emulate these games accurately. The user interface is very basic, nothing that really gives you any options to update the games like the emulator would. So it makes you wonder, why are you not emulating these games as opposed to buying this thing, right? And then now, so hopefully this is the last issue, but this really just gets it, puts a nail in the coffin for me. But
do we like the next time we find out there's ties to the mafia with it?
Yeah. But so this article that I'm going to cite one little part because there's good explanation it's from Eurogamer, but the basic issue is that the PlayStation Classic mixes PAL and NTSC games and the results disappoint. So this gives a quick explanation of that because you may not be familiar with why that's a big deal. So we're going halfway into the article here, but it says, what's baffling is the inclusion of PAL versions at all, particularly when the vast majority of the PAL titles in this list were actually developed in Japan or the United States. So what's the problem here? Well, these days, all console systems run at 60 hertz, format accepted by HD TVs the world over. Back in the day, PAL territories used TVs that ran at 50 hertz instead, and the easiest way to port games over to PAL systems was to simply run them more slowly. Most PAL games run at 83% of the full speed of the NTSC versions in terms of frame rate, and most of the time in terms of actual gameplay speed too. Side by side with the NTSC equivalents, PAL versions are generally slow and plodding and don't properly represent a US or Japanese developer's original vision. Adding to the sense of bafflement is that the North American PlayStation Classic has the same selection of PAL titles, meaning that for the first time, US users will get to experience the slow motion version of Tekken 3 we had to put up with in Europe. It's bad then, really bad, but it could have been worse. PAL games also tended to feature obtrusive black borders at the top and bottom of the screen. The PAL system does have a higher resolution than the NTSC, but it's only rarely utilized. But at least the PlayStation Classic clears this up, resizing the output to fill the resolution at the proper aspect ratio. So they go on to compare the original games to the games that have the PAL version on the Classic. And they're showing, like, if you just bought a regular PlayStation, it actually runs and plays better, these games that were being on the PlayStation Classic. And granted, not all the games have the PAL version. So the ones that do are Battle Arena Toshinden, Cool Borders 2, Grand Theft Auto, Jumping Flash, Tekken 3, and Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six. Now, I think out of all those, the ones that are the biggest deal would probably be, well, obviously Tekken 3. That's been the biggest one. People have been complaining that it's not running very well at all, which is
Battle Arena Toshinden is already slow in the NTSC. I wonder what it's like in PAL, even slower.
Yeah, and then the Tom Clancy Rainbow Six, they've already gotten a lot of flack because apparently of all the systems this game came out on back in the day, you know, it came out on the PlayStation, then N64, the PC. I think it was re-released for the Dreamcast. All the versions of that game were way better than the PlayStation. For whatever reason, the PlayStation got a really crappy version of that game. So people were kind of like, hey, why did you choose Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six for the PlayStation? That's an awful version of that game, instead of choosing something else. And then on top of that, they chose the PAL version, which means it's even worse than the original version that everyone thought was so bad on the original PlayStation. So it's just baffling. And now at this point, like, I don't see any real reason to buy this. At least with the SNES Classic, like, it's got some like options. You can sit there and, you know, mess with the graphics. It's got a snazzy user interface. They've kind of upped it to play at the resolution of your TV, at least the best they can. And it's a very clean and enjoyable experience. This is not even as good as the original versions. Like, if you just got a regular PlayStation, the games play better on the original PlayStation than it does on the PlayStation Classic. Why would you pay $100 to play something that's worse? You know?
You heard them, folks. Not worth the $100.
And like, what if you had the regular version of the game available that came out in the US and that was a superior version? Why would you just not use that version for those games? Like, I don't understand. There has to be a reason why they just chose to use the versions that came out in Europe, knowing full well that they were 83% the speed of the US versions. You know?
I can't speak the technical intricacies of it, but I would imagine they were just easier to port. Simple as that.
Yeah, maybe, I guess. I mean, I could see if they did that for like Final Fantasy VII, maybe, because that's a turn-based game primarily. And, you know, if there is something that feels a little clunky, it's probably going to be the mini games. And those mini games are clunky to begin with. So you can probably get away with that there. But for Tekken 3, that is, out of all these games, that is one of them for sure. For sure. That was not a good idea. Because, you know, fighting games like that, they require, you know, they require speed. They require, like, the higher frame rate, the better, right? That just does not seem like that was a good idea. So this, by far and away, it looks like, honestly, a garbage console to put out.
Oh, yeah. It's not worth $100. It's as simple as that. I mean, I don't know how to elaborate that more, but I mean, that's obviously the product is not up to snuff like it should be. It doesn't even have a lot of the titles that really tell you how great the PS1 was, like Tomb Raider and Crash Bandicoot or Spyro or Gran Turismo or anything like that, you know, or Parappa the Rappa, yeah, for that matter. Like, just none of it, not like, it's great we have Metal Gear and Final Fantasy VII and stuff like that, but, you know, at the same time, we're still getting like half a package here. Like the other games, like, seriously, who has nostalgic memories for Rainbow Six? I didn't even know Rainbow Six was on the PS1.
Yeah, I
until
mean, it's
this
one of
thing
those.
was announced.
Yeah, that just wasn't a good pick. I mean, there's lots of games on here that are not good picks. I mean, Mr. Driller, not really. Intelligent Cube, come on.
If you
Come on.
really want a device to play PS1 games digitally, go find a cheap PS3. And most of these games are like $5 to $10. And I mean, and you can pick exactly what you want. I would say the majority of the PS1 library has made it through their PSN digital store, at least the bigger titles. Like you got all the Final Fantasies, Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9 Tactics. You got all the other RPG greats. You know, you obviously got Metal Gear Solid and the VR missions one. You know,
The only, I agree, like, that's the easiest option. Just go get a PS3. You can play, if you still own the disc, you can plop it into the PlayStation 3 and play it on your TV. And that's a really good option. And especially if your TV has the option to play it in 4:3 aspect ratio instead of just blowing it up onto your screen, which most TVs should. It can look fairly good. The only problem is some games I've gotten on there, they've been kind of hit or miss with the way it looks. There just seems to be like a level of fog or just general blurriness that's over the game that like just does not feel right.
yeah,
That
I would warn anyone that is putting it like on the Vita or their PS3. Any game you pick, just look it up real quick and make sure there's no real technical issues with it. Like I love Legend of Dragoon, but I tried playing it on my Vita, and there's a level of input lag that makes it really hard to pull off the combos that are required in the game to do a good amount of damage.
yeah.
So be careful.
There can be some issues, but all in all, that's a much better option than buying a PS1 Classic at this point, I think. Short of just emulating the games. I hate to say it, but it is what it is. So that is out there. It's coming out tomorrow at this point while we're recording it. So tomorrow being Monday. And let us know if you all have gotten one, if you've gotten a chance to get your hands on it, and just give us your thoughts on it. We'd be really interested to hear what exactly you all think about the system, and let us know. Maybe we're giving it too hard of a time, but from everything I've seen, I don't think I've seen a single positive review for this console. So
yeah, I think the biggest compliment you can give is that it's bare bones. It gives you what you want. Simple enough menu to toggle through, but it's about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's got Final Fantasy 7, Metal Gear Solid, and Resident Evil Director's Cut. That's not bad. That's the biggest compliment.
Mm-hmm.
And Tekken 3, which plays at 83% of the original. But anyways, so yeah, there's that. Like I said, let us know if you're going to pick it up, and we'd love to hear your thoughts. Next up, though, we have... this is a story that you sent me. I can kind of bring up the article here, but did you want to kind of talk about it a little bit regarding Nintendo's trademark?
Yeah, I saw it this morning, and it was 2 trademarks that Nintendo gave. I forgot what the other one was, but the most relevant Fossil Fighters, right? The most relevant one, though, at least for this podcast, I guess, is they trademarked The Last Story. And if you don't know what The Last Story is, this is a title that came out on the Wii back in 2012 in America, I believe. And it was created by Mistwalker, who is headed by Final Fantasy creator Hironobu Sakaguchi. And I did play the game back in 2012, and I would say it's a really good game. It has a great story. It has a combat system that would actually make Final Fantasy 15 pale in comparison. I think Final Fantasy 15 has a flashier battle system, but I think Last Story has a more tight control system because it is a action. It's kind of hard to explain. It's an action cover shooter-esque sword fighting. Like you take cover, and when you find the opportunity, you go and strike with your sword. That type of deal.
Very interesting.
Yeah, I mean the artwork's beautiful, the story's great. I like the English voice acting for it. I like the British type of voice acting for it. It sounds a little awkward at times, but at the same time, it has a little charm to it. So overall, it's a great game. If you have a Wii or a Wii U, the game's pretty cheap to find. I would definitely grab and play it, or you can hold out and see if Nintendo is doing anything with this trademark. We certainly haven't heard anything from Mistwalker in regards to this, um, but with that trademark, if they do anything, it can mean one of two things. One, it could be that they're going to remaster the game and release it for the Switch, or or it's possible it could be a Last Story 2, and Nintendo's going to publish it again. But I don't know if that one would be the case. I do. My bet is more on the Last Story HD remaster.
Yeah, me too.
And that's what I'm hoping for ultimately. And I want that to get on the Switch. I don't think it got a fair shot on the Wii, at least in America, because it came out at the very, very end of the Wii's life cycle. Excuse me. And I mean the Wii U came out the same year, 2012. So I mean it came out at the very end. Now the Switch has just been dominating in terms of sales. I mean,
yeah, it's done really well.
I mean, it's done very hot in sales, and it has a couple great games, like role playing like games on there too. So this is definitely something for JRPG people to get into, and apparently Nintendo Mistwalker, if this trademark goes anywhere, sees that also. And I would love to see an HD version of this game. Like the artwork is just so great that it translates well to the character models also. I mean, there's just a lot right that happened in this game, and I think it deserves a fair shot. And I think the Switch is its fair shot.
Yeah, the fact that they've taken a re-interest in this game is very promising to me. That tells me that they do want to do something with it. And I think probably the simplest thing would be an HD remaster on the Switch. I don't see why they wouldn't do that, And I could also see other games that came out around that same time or at the same time, such as Xenoblade Chronicles, etc. I think that would be a really good move for them, and I think that's probably what it is. I did see in the article that they contemplated like maybe a sequel, but like you said, since the game was it wasn't the most popular when it came out. It didn't do bad, but it wasn't like a smash hit either. And it was kind of at the end of the console's lifetime. It's kind of hard for me to believe that they would just make a sequel to the game for that reason. But I guess that's possible. But I think it's more likely an HD remaster. I do think that one of the suggestions brought up in this article, kind of bringing up this story, I think is an interesting idea, but I just don't see this definitely happening at all. But it says it's equally likely we may see some of these titles implemented in some way within Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. I don't see them introducing a Last Story character in Super Smash Bros.
I don't.
I mean, I guess it's not impossible, but that would be a very obscure one to do.
Yeah, I don't think it's well known enough for that. I mean, I guess you can make some spirits from a character or two, but I don't. I mean, I like the characters. The characters are great. I don't think they just. I don't think they stand out to the point that Nintendo would go out of their way compared to other characters.
Yeah, I think they would do an HD remaster first, and if that actually sold really, really well, it was really popular. Maybe it had much more popularity on its re-release. Maybe at that point, maybe they could do something in the future after a new audience has learned about this game and played through the game. But as of right now, I just don't see it.
I also don't see it because Sakurai, the head of Super Smash Bros., already said they already know the 5 characters that are going to be the DLC characters already.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I don't think this really matters that much now that I think about it, but they just recently trademarked Last Story. I feel like they would have redone the trademark again like earlier. But I don't know how it works on the business level. But I would have figured they would have just like trademarked that earlier, much earlier, if they were already developing a last story related character.
Yeah, for sure. But I think this probably is a good sign, though, that we're getting an HD remaster, which is a big deal because I've never completely played through this game. I've only really gotten my hands on it just a little bit, and I really liked what I played, so I'd be very interested in going through the game completely to the end. It definitely looks like a hidden gem, I would say. So I'm definitely very, very interested.
That's the best way to put it. I really think this is a game that everyone should play. This is the direction I was hoping Miss Walker would take for this type of game. I think my one complaint about it's a complaint and not a complaint at the same time of Last Story is that I wish we could see more of the world, but I get what they were going for. They were going for like it all takes place in one kingdom for like 90% of the game. Yeah. And it's a very personal, intimate story, like with with like the group of main characters. So in the context of that, the small scale works. It's just that me personally, I wish that we got to see more of the world.
Yeah,
simple as that. But it's still a great RPG regardless.
Yeah, one of the complaints I have seen also about it is, aside from the story being great, is some of the plot points, I guess, seemed a little vague or out of place. I don't know if that's the case. I'll have to play through it completely myself to really put a kind of closing pin on that. But that's the biggest criticism I've seen. Other than that, it's been overwhelming praise. So definitely excited if this actually turns out to be something of note.
Yeah, I'll buy it day one if it gets released HD.
Now, there's another... Well, I was going to say another Square Enix game, but that was not a Square Enix game. It was a Sakaguchi game. But there was a Final Fantasy game that was announced recently. And I know, Eric, you're going to be very, very excited about this one.
Yeah, we'll see about that.
All right, so Square Enix announces War of the Visions, Final Fantasy Brave Exvius. So this is going to be a sequel to the original mobile game called Final Fantasy Brave Exvius. And there's a short little trailer here. I'm going to play it a little bit while we're talking here. But I would say this is my opinion alone here, I would say of the Square Enix mobile games that are branded with Final Fantasy. So I know that's a very small hole here, right? Because I know we could go on and talk about Chaos Rings, etc. But of the Final Fantasy branded mobile games, I would say that Brave Exvius was the best, in my opinion, of the ones that I played. That doesn't mean it was a great game, but it was one where I was like, I wouldn't mind if they kept doing games like this. And I know there is a fan base for this game. It's actually apparently has a decent story. But anyway, so they're making a sequel that was announced today. It looks not too bad. I mean, it's just a bunch of concept art, but seems promising.
Yeah, the game's Brave Exvius is okay. I think it banks on nostalgia the least of them. That and Mobius Final Fantasy are kind of more the lower ones. I think between that and Mobius Final Fantasy, I probably like Mobius a little more, despite it being just like viciously repetitive. But Brave Exvius does feel like the most original of them because it actually has like a different feeling story. It's not really banking on too many elements of Final Fantasy in the past. So I will give it praise for that, but it still does a lot of the microtransaction deal and I mean building up your characters. They have like these super like freaking Super Saiyan Ultra Instinct levels you can give characters now that are just like I think they're like tremendous grinds at this point unless you buy like the microtransaction. So there isn't too much different on that end. But I guess it's just harmless mostly. I could say. I don't really have a problem with the second one coming out. It's just nothing really special about the first one for me. Beautiful artwork by like Yoshitaka Amano, but that's about. I mean, that's one of the bigger phrases I can give it.
Yeah, for sure. I don't. I just think it's it looks like an interesting game. I might try it out. I downloaded the first one and I played it for a little bit, but like you said, I got to the point where it was just taking a while to progress, and I don't know. Usually mobile games are not my cup of tea, but I thought it was interesting that they decided to create a sequel to this game and announce it. Given last week I talked about how Square Enix was pulling all their mobile titles from Belgium because of the crackdown on microtransactions. And they were worried apparently that they might get sued for gambling. So it seemed to me last week I was sitting here talking about how, you know, Final Fantasy, or they're pulling well, I shouldn't say Final Fantasy, but they're pulling their mobile titles out of Belgium. Maybe Square is finally, taking their eyes off mobile games now, and they're going to put their eyes towards something else. And, lo and behold, a week later, they announced a new mobile game.
I'm surprised they didn't try to do something similar to, I'm trying to remember who it was. I forgot which company, but another company fought the gambling aspect of it by letting you know which one you get next. So say they'll give you like the first loot box for free, but they'll let you know what's in the next loot box. They won't tell you what the third or fourth one is, but they'll tell you what's in the second one. So when you buy the second one, they'll tell you what's in the third one, and then you can decide if you want to purchase it from there. That's how they fight it.
But
so I'm kind of surprised Square Enix hasn't done that yet.
Well, every time you buy the loot box, you know what's coming up. Like, you know what's in that loot box, right?
Yeah, you know what's in the next loot box.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So even though you know that it's not going to have what you want, you're thinking the fifth one might have it.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's what entices you to buy it. So that's what we like to call a loophole.
That's sneaky. That's very, very sneaky.
Clever.
Interesting.
Sneaky.
Yeah.
Clever.
Oh, not sure how I feel about that, but at least it's the right direction. I feel like letting people know is a good direction to go, but that's not really the place I want to end up at. But
is it a tad exploitative? That's definitely up for debate. That was a way to get around it.
Yeah. So, anyways, I'm surprised, and jokingly here, that Square, if they're going to do another mobile game, they didn't come out and say, "Hey, you know those DLCs we were promising you for Final Fantasy 15? They're now coming out on mobile." With the Final Fantasy 15 mobile version having expansions, they could have pumped those out real cheap.
Yeah, they could have.
But anyways, but I thought that was kind of a quick little story there to kind of talk about, because kind of conflicting with what I talked about last week. But let's go to some comments here. We had a lot actually from last week, so that's good. I was worried how that was going to go. I was doing it by myself there.
Oh yeah. Sorry, I missed out last week. By the way, so I'm not 100% sure what y'all talked about. I haven't seen it yet. Haven't seen my own show yet.
It's all good. Essentially, we kept it short, but Square Enix pulling mobile games in Belgium. Phantasy Star for Switch was confirmed. And then I talked briefly about Dragon Quest XI. Basically talked about how we had kind of talked a little bit about how, we like Dragon Quest, but sometimes when we talk about it, it doesn't get the view counts that we'd like, but we still would like to talk about the game. But what do you all think? And just kind of getting people's opinions on that. So I guess we'll just start from the top here. First one is from Daniel Scott. Says, I'd be all for a Dragon Quest XI discussion. Love the discussion episode you guys did on Xenoblade Chronicles. I'm holding out for the forever away Switch version though, so a lengthy non-spoiler section as far as story goes would be much appreciated.
Oh, that would be a toughie.
Yeah, I think that's.
I guess we can segment it out. We can do like a non-spoiler, like first half, then maybe like a spoiler second half, and you can watch the second half once you played the game.
Yeah, part 1, part 2 type deal.
Yeah, we can probably do that.
Yeah. Well, we kind of broke up the Xenoblade Chronicles one a little bit, kind of like that, right? Where the first 20 minutes or 15 minutes, we kind of like talked about the game in a basic sense before diving in. But I think that's what you suggested. It's probably the best way to go about it. Then Andrew Harrison, he says, yes, please, for the Dragon Quest XI discussion episode. I've really been looking forward to it. I finished the game about a month ago and have been excited to hear you guys talk about it. So got his input there. Appreciate it. And we have Elaine Lutkin. I don't know if I said your last name correctly, but he says, this channel deserves way more subscribers. I recently discovered you guys on Spotify when I was looking for a new gaming podcast, and I was stoked to find one that was heavily focused on games like Final Fantasy and other JRPGs, which are my absolute favorite types of games. I even listened to you guys during my 10 hours of driving during the Thanksgiving weekend. Keep up the great content.
I agree. We do need more subscribers.
Yeah, for sure. So if you're listening to this on the audio only version, come watch us on YouTube. Subscribe there. Try watching us on that version. I think you'll like it. But appreciate the comments there, Lane.
Yeah,
really do.
Do appreciate the compliment. Thanks, Ben.
And then we have Leanne. She says Phantasy Star 2, 3, and 4 are launching on Switch on December 7th via the Genesis Classic Collection, and Phantasy Star 1 is coming to Switch on December 13th via Sega Ages. What a time to be alive! Now, if only we can get any of the more modern Phantasy Star games on there. Phantasy Star Online Episode 1 and 2 would make me the happiest girl on earth. I loved that collection on the GameCube, or maybe bring the PSP games over. I love those too. I would ask for Phantasy Star Online 2, but I know that would never come to the West.
Well, I have good news and bad news. Good news is Phantasy Star Online 2 is coming for Switch. Bad news, Japan only. Sorry.
I think that's got to be a temporary thing, though. I can't imagine.
No. I mean, the game was supposed to come out in 2013 for us. They said it's on delay, and they've never said anything about it again. We just assumed it was canceled.
Why? But why would they? This is what I don't understand. Why did they do that with games like that? Like, it's it's going to sell and make money. Like, why would you not? Why would you not? There's no reason not to.
I will say, if you do want to play Phantasy Star Online 2, because I was someone who played it for a good while. I did like that game a lot. I just kind of got burned out by it. But there is an English patch that you can download. I believe it's called I think it's from arcslayer.com that does it. And it's really good. I mean, they get like pretty much 90% of the stuff translated. The one true difficult part is that you have to register an account in Japanese, which can be okay. There's guides for it until you get to the Japanese CAPTCHA to prove you're not a robot. That one took me a little time to figure out. What I actually did was I went on my phone and I drew each symbol that I saw on there and created the symbol, copy and pasted it, and then put it on there, and it worked.
Hey,
I can't read Japanese at all, so I mean that was the only way for me to do it. But I registered it and I played it, and if you're willing to go through those troubles, I mean, the game's pretty fun to play. But I think it's something that would be more fun to play on the go.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Convenience is a thing here. So, for sure.
I mean, it would be cool to see Phantasy Star Online 1 come back, but I think Sega's probably going to leave that in the past.
Yeah. We'll have to see. Then goes on with BioPhoenix, who says, funny enough, right now in Canada, AAA games are being sold for $80. That's because of price conversion, and I have to say I hate it. Yeah, that's outrageous. That's a lot of money. He goes on to say, Phantasy Star 1 Switch will add a map. Now that is a big upgrade. I might have to get it for that. And then he goes on to talk about, I'll give some context here. We were kind of talking about I was talking about one of his comments where he was talking about the Xbox One that is supposedly going to come out that's not going to have the disc drive, and it's going to be only digital. And he was saying that there's a lot of reasons why that's a bad idea, and one of the reasons being that people's accounts could get hacked and etc. And I said, that's a concern, but I didn't see why that wouldn't be a concern right now. Also, if you buy games online, right? But I just asked for some clarification with that, so he's kind of giving me some clarification. He says, what I meant with the credit card thing was back in 2011, Sony got hit hard, and not only were the online servers down for a while, but also people had their information stolen, and stuff like that still happens. So let's say by next generation they go all digital and streaming, and something were to happen just like in 2011, people are going to lose their minds. So I see what the context he's giving here is. He's saying that if that's the only option in the next generation, like only digital sales, right? People wouldn't be able to game at all if something like that happened again. So that would be a concern for sure.
Yeah, I agree. That's definitely something to be concerned over. It's not really something I think about when I decide to purchase physical over digital. I just like ownership of it. But I mean, that's a good point also, that, but nowadays almost everyone, mass majority of people are putting their credit cards into some form of online service, rather it's Amazon, Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, other websites out there. I mean, if you don't have a good secure system, I think we're already at this point in our society where, the hackers can get to it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think kind of the direction he was going was just the fact that if the only console that you had was digital only, it couldn't accept discs. If there was something that happened like the 2011 thing with Sony, where online servers were down for a long time, that you wouldn't be able to buy anything new, and you may not be able to play any of the games you currently have because the servers went down. So, I mean, that's also an issue as well. Or like he points out with streaming, if the servers go down because they got hacked, that could cause some frustration if that's your only way to play games, for sure. So
yeah, I'm not sure the PS5, Xbox 2 era will get rid of physical games yet, maybe by PS6, Xbox 3, maybe.
I would think by PS6 that's just going to be the standard.
Possibly. I think the only reason this version is digital is simply just to make the console cheaper. I think that's just the main intent of taking the drive out. I mean, Blu-ray drivers can be a little more expensive if you're mass producing them, so it does take some cost out when you decide to take that out. So if someone's looking for like the absolute cheapest base model Xbox One, I mean, that can be a thing, but I mean, if the price comparison is very similar to the original base Xbox One, then they need to convince me, why is this the better choice than that?
Yeah. Well, I do think in the future, though, because we're already seeing console lifespans shortening a little bit. It's smaller than it used to be. And I think that's only going to get shorter. Even in this last life cycle with the PS4, we needed a PS4 Pro to come in midway to try to appease people to hold on a little bit longer until the PS5 comes out. So I kind of wonder if things keep going at that rate, if maybe, if they can removing that drive will really bring the price down that much, if that would be the new way to compete, right? Well, hey, yeah, you can spend $550 on this new console and you can buy the games, or you could just buy them digitally and the games and the system's $350. Which one are people going to choose? I would still choose the $550 one because, like you, I like owning the games, but I think a lot of people would go for the digital only, especially nowadays where you can get a really fast internet connection for not that much money, so.
Yeah, if that's the way people prefer to play their games, it's not cool. I mean, I buy digital sometimes.
Yeah, I've been surprised. I've seen a lot of people that have completely gone over to the digital side of things with the Nintendo Switch. You know, they put the new SD card in their Switch, and they're like, whatever. I'm just going to download games digitally. That's the way I want to play these games. And you know, I've seen a lot of people say that. So I think there is a market out there for digital only games or a digital only console. But maybe I'm getting old, but that just freaks me out that I don't actually own the physical disc.
I bought a lot of games for the Switch, and I have a 256 gigabyte card in mine, and I've only used about half of it. And
That's
even then, if I get to the point where I start getting full, I'm just going to delete game data off the games I'm just not playing anymore. It's just I've had no reason to take them off yet.
So when you delete them, can you put them back on later?
Yeah, they keep your save data. It just gets rid of the game data, so you can make space. But if you want to play the game again, all you gotta do is re-download it, and there you go.
Gotcha. Because I ended up getting a 128 gig SD card for my Switch because with some of those Black Friday sales on the Switch, I bought a couple of games for real cheap, and that 20 gigs they give you on the Switch, that thing filled up real quick. So, I had to get an expansion of the memory. Just curious. But yeah, regardless, BioPhoenix, thank you again for the comments, and thank you everyone for commenting on our episodes. I would really appreciate it. Keep coming with the comments. Gives us something to talk about aside from the news and anything else that we got going on. We really, really appreciate it. But I think that wraps us up for this week. So we'll talk to you all next week. Take it easy, guys.
Take care.